2023 to order. Our first thing is the presentation of the 2023 draft budget. So 2.1, we have the 2023 budget presentation for public consultation. And just before Terry gets into it, I just wanted to take a bit of time to thank council for the time they've spent to go through this budget. I know coming into a new council, it's one of the first things we had to deal with, which is, can be a little challenging because it's new to some. And in that aspect too, I also wanted to give a thank you to the staff for the time that has went into this. And it's also tough for them going into this with new council because they don't quite know the direction, that a new mayor and council wants. So I just wanted to thank staff for all the time and all the effort that's went into this. So thank you. And I will pass it over to Terry for a presentation.
Thank you, and through you, your worship. I'll just wait till Joanne brings it up. So, welcome to the 2023 public budget consultation. So I don't have the clicker. It's not working.
I guess one thing just before
gonna...
Terry gets going, I might just mention to those that are watching, if there is comments and stuff, you can leave them on Facebook through the presentation or afterwards, and then we'll get to them later on in the agenda. So forgot about that. So sorry, Terry.
Okay. So first slide, please, Joanne. So the first bullet speaks to the Peace River Agreement money, which is also referred to as PRA, and Council's goal in achieving a 70-30 split for the PRA by 2030, with 70% being allocated to capital infrastructure and 30% towards operations, mainly for debt servicing. The third bullet speaks to the city achieving 55% of the PRA to capital in 2023. The proposed mill rate for 2023 has a 4.5% increase from 2022, with 1.5% of that going towards the paving levy. The city will be borrowing $5 million in 2023 for capital paving projects, which will be coordinated with the water and sewer upgrades as necessary. Not added on this slide, but important to mention, is that in 2022, Council made developing and implementing an asset management plan for the city a strategic priority. This will be the foundation for a healthy and vibrant community, and in order to have a sustainable, resilient community that thrives now and for generations to come, it is imperative that the city has a financial plan in place to proactively maintain and replace aging infrastructure. This slide shows the total assessment for 2022 in the first column, which was $1.8 billion, to total assessment for 2023 in the next column, which is $1.9 billion. Residential assessment has an overall increase of 5.84%, while commercial increased 2.69% from 2022, and major industry had a decrease in assessment by 24.27% from 2022, for an overall increase in assessment in 2023 of 5.21%. Next slide, please. This slide shows the mill rate increase of 4.5% in the middle column for 2023 for all classes compared to 2022. Mill rate's on the left, and as you can see, the proposed residential rate is $6.5182 per thousand for residential, and commercial is $19.6629 per thousand. This slide gives a general idea of what municipal portion of property taxes will be based on 2023's current assessed values, ranging from a home valued from $150,000 to $600,000. This slide doesn't account for other government transfers such as school tax, Peace River Regional District, the Hospital District, Municipal Finance Authority, or BC Assessment. This is just the municipal portion of the taxes. It also doesn't account for the homeowner grant, which can range from anywhere from $770 to $1,045 that can be claimed through the province. This slide represents the municipal portion of property taxes generated based on 2023's assessment of $1.9 billion and mill rates per class, which, as you can see, generates $19.97 million of tax revenue, with the majority of that coming from commercial and residential. This slide shows where the city will generate its revenue. You can see that municipal taxes generate 24.5%, 20.2% is from PRA, fees and charges make up 18.4%, collections from other government agencies, which account for the non-municipal portion of property taxes I was just referring to, are estimated at 11.2%. Grants in lieu and other taxes account for 3.4%. Other revenue consists of federal and provincial grants and transfers from other governments, which accounts for 5.1%, 6.2% for borrowing, and 11% will be used from capital reserve for carry forward projects from previous years. Next slide, please. This slide breaks down what makes up fees and charges revenue. As you can see, the majority of the $14.85 million comes from water and sewer services, which account for 77.1% of this revenue. Environmental waste services, recreation, and air transport make up the majority of the rest of the revenue for fees and charges at 17.7%. Where will the money go in operations in 2023? $10 million or 19.3% for protective services and 9.7 or 18.6% for recreation and cultural services. Transportation accounts for $6.9 million or 13.3%. General administration accounts for $4.94 million or 9.5%. Debt servicing accounts for 7.9% and water utilities accounts for 6.4%. This slide breaks up what makes up protective services and is broken down with total expenses being in the first column, fees and charges that offset the expenses in the middle column, and the net cost to the city on the right. As you can see, police have expenses of $5.5 million and revenue of $245,000 for total expenses of $5.2 million. The fire department has expenses of $3.66 million and revenue of $30,000 for total expenses of $3.6 million. Safety, bylaw enforcement, animal control, and building inspection total $891,000 for a total cost to the city of $9.6 million for protective services. This slide is busy and I apologize for that. It details what makes up recreation and culture, broken down by the facility. As you can see, the expenses total $9.7 million, as seen in the first column, and revenue generated totals $936,000 across all facilities, shown in the middle column, for an overall cost to the city of $8.77 million. This slide breaks down what makes up transportation, which is common services, roads and streets, transit, and air transportation. As you can see, roads and streets is roughly $4 million. However, this function encompasses all things roads, such as snow plowing and snow removal, sanding and gravel, sidewalk repairs, crack filling and potholes, drainage and steaming, street lighting, and line painting. Transit accounts for $446,000 with $76,000 of offsetting revenue for a total cost to the city of $369,000. The airport expenses total $1.5 million with offsetting revenue of $473,000 for a total cost of a little over $1 million. This slide details what makes up general administration, which consists of legislative, administration, human resources, finance, information technology, other general, and elections. Total expenses for 2023 are $4.94 million. These departments support all other departments within the city. Next slide, please. This slide shows the historical trend of debt servicing for the city for the last 5 years. As you can see, total debt servicing costs for the city in 2023 are $4.05 million, with $1.65 million being interest expense and $2.41 million being principal payments. This shows the historical trends of PRA in relation to capital, operations, and debt servicing. So for 2023, the allocation to the city is $16.32 million, with 55% being allocated to capital, 14% to debt servicing, and the remaining 31% to operations. As you can see from the slide, the city is on the right track to meeting its 70-30 mandate by 2030. Since 2018, the city has increased its allocation to capital from $5.6 million in operations in 2018 to in capital in 2018 to $8.9 million in 2023, or 58%. So that's a good thing. Next slide. This slide details the capital funding sources for 2023. The biggest contributor is conditional government grants that the city has applied for or will be applying for at $11.3 million. As you can see from the note, there is approximately $10 million worth of projects that if the city does not receive the funding, the projects will not move forward. PRA is accounting for $8.2 million. Community gas tax, water and sewer infrastructure fees, and interest earned are also being utilized to fund the 2023 capital projects. Additionally, $4.95 million is coming from the borrowing for the paving program. Capital reserve represents the carry forward projects that are not utilizing 2023 funds as they were budgeted in previous years. Therefore, these projects are not utilizing new money. Total capital expenses for 2023 total $36.4 million, with $27.5 million of new projects in 2023 and $8.9 million of carry forward from previous years. As you can see, paving is roughly $9.2 million and sidewalks is $6.7 million. However, sidewalks include a $6 million walking trail that is contingent on a grant. So if the city doesn't receive the grant, this project will not move forward. The total general capital for 2023 is $27.67 million. Water accounts for $3.49 million, and sewer is accounting for $3.5 million. And this is primarily due to the water and sewer being upgraded as needed alongside the paving projects for 2023. Next slide. This slide is merely stating that the city had $37.6 million of capital revenue and $36.4 million is going towards new and carry forward projects, leaving $1.2 million for the city to allocate to capital reserves, as seen here. It is imperative for the city to build up capital reserves in order to proactively maintain and replace the aging infrastructure when necessary, and this is aligning with Council's strategic priority of asset management planning. Any questions?
Brenda, we're opening this up for public questions after the next part. Okay. Thank you very much, Terry. That was, I know a lot of time went into creating that, from you and staff, but it's very, it's easy to read, and there's a lot of great information in there. I did want to point out you did put the good news. I think the other part of the good news too is where the city stands with the PRA agreement, and I think if you dig into that a little bit more, when you look at the interest payments, on loans is 14%, which was used for capital expenditures. It's sitting a lot closer to 70 already, but still great, and it's nice to see it going that way, as well as the asset management plan that you talked about. I know that'll be a big thing moving forward about protecting the city's infrastructure and our facilities. And the other part I wanted to touch on a little bit too is just strategic planning, that this new council has set a date in March to have new strategic planning. So after that we'll have we're looking forward to that, council as and staff as well, so that'll be good. Good job with that, Terry. Councillor Earl, you had some question?
I just one note, one question. So just I was thinking for anyone observing the presentation, specifically to make note of on the assessment value slide with the 24.27% reduction in major industry. It's an important piece of context to note that Dawson Creek only has a small handful of major industrial properties. So when one of them is scuttled or changes how they're doing business, that can dramatically decrease the percentage change, but it isn't, that's just a matter of we've got very few major industrial properties within the city limits. So that's an important piece of context. And then also with respect to the, sewer and water reserves, the water reclamation plant is that figure. When do we finalize that figure? When does that get allocated? Because we are now, and I think it's another piece of good news that we don't highlight. I think 2022 was the first year where we were collecting revenue from the water reclamation plant that can now be put into capital. I think it's designated towards capital, but still that alleviates some of those pressures. So was that included in there, and when should how is that going to be broken out in future budgets so we know how that revenue is being collected? Because it is kind of its own special pot of money.
So through your worship, you are correct that did come up in, I think, July. August is when they started paying for reclaimed water. I believe the revenue earned from that to the end of the year, 2022, was almost $1 million. So that definitely is a good news story. And as it sits right now, it's part of the sewer infrastructure that's going to capital.
Okay.
Some of it is still in operations.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Thanks, Terry. Thanks, Councillor Earl. Councillor Parslow?
Yes, thank you, Terry. Your presentation just reinforces a few things for me. The $5 million capital for the road repair is presented as if we're going to be borrowing money for that. Given interest rates what they are, have you considered that we do some internal borrowing?
So through your worship, it's too late for 2023 as timelines for the spring issue. But for 2024, it's definitely something that I've been thinking about with interest rates increasing.
Okay. Second question, and I believe this is in your presentation. You listed under recreation the Ovintiv Center, and I put forward that how I thought that was a little unfair. It inflates our recreation costs when a big portion of the Ovintiv Center certainly is recreation, but another big rationale for having it is economic development. And I noticed you hadn't made that change yet. I got the impression that that was thought to be a good change.
Through your worship, no, I'm sorry, I haven't made that change. But I'm happy to. I will.
Well, I may be wrong.
Yeah.
Councillor.
It's just the way it falls in the budget. So I mean, if we took it out, we would be looking at 7.1 million, roughly 9 point. Yeah.
Well,
for
my
recreation.
reasoning is that, it distorts the recreation
Yeah, I
budget.
agree. I
And
do agree.
people talk to me about the high level, but it's not a fair comparison. So I just thought that when I mentioned it before, it was thought to be a good idea by council to possibly do that. So maybe it was not resolved and you didn't do it. I'm just suggesting that I'm still persisting in that one as a suggestion.
Yeah, and it's funny that you say that because when I was doing the PowerPoint, I actually thought, maybe I should put this at the bottom. So
Right.
I should have listened to myself.
Now, certainly, I'm very pleased with the progress with the PRA money. But again, just for clarification, the goal of 70% capital, 30% debt retirement. I think we need to maybe at strategic planning really revisit that 70-30 because we're carrying enough debt already without adding to it. And current debt is, I think you said, 14%. I'd hate to see it go to 30%. So anyway, that's a topic for another meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Parslow. Was there any, Councillor Apolonio?
Again, thank you very much for the presentation, Ms. Terry. And of course, very good on the PRA. Just one question, like the air transportation. We know that WestJet is now not continuing anymore their service here in Dawson Creek. So that budget is like the same still going on to 2023, or that's being considered ahead of that, like the expenses and fees and charges?
Through your worship, so this is based on draft 2 budget, so no, at this time it isn't taken into account, and at this time I'm not really sure what the effect will be on revenue or the expenses. That'll be a conversation, so hopefully, and I'll know that information by March 13th for draft 3.
Thank you. All right, any more questions? No? Okay, thanks, Terry. Our next order of business is 3 correspondence and delegations. We have 3.1, letter from Duncan Melkinson, Executive Director, Dawson Creek Art Gallery, received on February 13th, 2023. The request for the Art Gallery capital project to be approved in the 2023 budget. And Brenda, I'll just have you read the letter if that's...
Through your worship, I do see Mr. Malkinson's here. I'm wondering if he wanted to read. Otherwise, I can.
Would you like to read it, Duncan, or would you? I'll have you come up and read it, please, Duncan. Do you have a copy of it? Okay. Just got to push your button on there, Duncan, and then you push it, and then I'll turn it on. So
That's fancy.
there you go. Welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's exciting to be here. And I just, I'm basically here on a advocacy kind of mission today. You know, at the gallery here, we've been working on a project with city staff over the last, few years to try to rectify some of the accessibility and, entrance or accessibility and, safety concerns at the entrance to the gallery. And as is mentioned, in the letter itself, there's some, different ways that the, entrance might be able to be upgraded or improved. And we're flexible on how exactly, that takes place. I'm not here to beat the desk or anything like that, but here to mostly leave the sentiment that we're happy to work with city staff, work with city council, and, be a good partner to try to, move the project, to its next steps. So I could read it out if you wish. It reads, to the mayor and the council of the city of Dawson Creek. The City of Dawson Creek and the South Peace Art Society have sought accessible solutions for the main entrance to the Dawson Creek Art Gallery for more than a decade. The existing doorway, automatic door opener configurations, and current ground level staircase are all challenges for current access to the gallery. In the 2022 financial plan, $50,000 were allocated for an architectural scope and a render for the project, which the Dawson Creek Art Gallery and a city team worked together on to identify and develop a render, and the renders attached to the letter itself. When the cost of the team's recommendations were projected, around $671,000 in the fall of 2022, city staff encouraged a rework of the project, which resulted in it not being presented in the later versions or in any of the versions of the 2023 financial plan. The rework of the project hasn't happened yet, and as far as I understand, with city staff, there have been no funds identified in the 2023 financial plan for doing so, for either design or for planning. So given recent transitions, on the, in the community, there's a fear at the art gallery's side that this project might get, lost in the 2-3 capital plan shuffle. So we like I mentioned before, we're here to just say that we're happy and excited to move on to next steps with this project. And we recognize that, council's got a overarching commitment to, the well-being of the community as a whole. And, that's a difficult context to evaluate a lot of the project requests within. But we also respectfully submit that some of the new capital spending contemplated in the existing capital plan, such as onboarding new capital assets, might be well considered after, capital repairs, accessibility upgrades, and maintenance of existing assets is completed. Ideally, we'd request council's approval of the project in the 2023 capital plan with carry forward as needed. But if, timelines are too tight in that respect, we're happy to work with staff to consider funding alternatives, such as doing the project in phases or seeking grant funding. The one program that came to mind on my end was the Northern Healthy Communities Fund capital stream, which is 500,000, to a maximum of 80% funding. If the render in concept, the other thing that I wanted to include in here is the render itself, just in case, there was any commentary afoot either on the staff side or the council side for the content and character elements that are in the render itself. Because this might be a good juncture if there are thoughts on that to get that feedback, and then that can help guide planning going forward. So if the render doesn't meet council's expectations, then we'd hope that council express support for the project and identify some design funding or redesign funding in 2023, in the hopes that we can identify some new alternatives. So access to the gallery is a consistent challenge that we hear about from our patrons, and it's a matter that city staff are no doubt familiar with, and that council is no doubt familiar with. We want to basically keep the positive progress that we've seen in the last year going forward, and we want to make the project a reality. So we're just looking for council support to make that happen, and we offer whatever help we can to help it get there. So, yeah.
Perfect. Thanks, Duncan. And, thank you to the Dawson Creek Art Gallery as well for all they do in our community and, the services they offer. It's, greatly appreciated. So just those that are watching, this letter was put forward, so it's here for us to have any questions. And then it's also coming back to our February 27th regular council meeting with Committee of the Whole to go through. So I will just open it up if council has any questions for Duncan. Oh, Councilor Parslow, I wasn't ignoring you. Sorry.
The Economic Infrastructure Program for the NDIT is the one I would suggest fits. I see this project as being very worthwhile, very necessary. I really do think we need to take care of our existing infrastructure before new builds, so that resonates with me. But I got this just in preparation for a couple of things from a lady, a manager of an NDIT called Anna Peasgood, and I strongly recommend you liaise with her because I think this would qualify for an NDIT grant with some financial support necessary from the city. So this particular program contributes to the building stronger communities and economic growth, and it supports the renovation of new or fixes to existing multi-use facilities. So I would suggest that one. And I think that I'm looking at Terry here, though she doesn't know this, but Terry has liaised with Anna as well. Does that go up to 500,000 or 300? I've forgotten. The Economic Infrastructure Program. Sorry to put you on the spot.
Yeah, I also think it's 500,000.
Yeah,
I think it was up to 500,000.
Thank you. That's all I had.
Thanks, Councilor Parslow. Any other questions? No? All right. Well, thank you, Duncan.
Thank you.
Like I said, it'll be brought back to council too. So
Thank
we'll
you.
let you know. So thank you.
That's what I understood the appropriate protocol to be, given that this was just a public comment thing. So, okay, thank you
Yeah, you
for your
bet.
time. I appreciate it.
But thank you. All right. Our next order of business is to call for public comments. I will hand this over to Brenda and see if there's any comments on social media yet or on Facebook.
Yeah, through your worship, there has been no comments received yet.
Okay.
And I know there's about a 10-second lag on comments to be received here, so we can just leave it for 30 seconds or so to see if any comments are put in, and then I will let you know.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Brenda. I think we'll leave it for a minute because we just opened it, and then if there's nothing, then we can move on. So. Yeah, the Jeopardy music. I know Counselor Earl's pretty musical. He could maybe
No, man, I don't have any instruments. Since we are getting comments from Facebook, I'd be surprised if some people just ask their questions in the form of an answer. Fun times.
All right, well, I think it's been a minute. There's been no questions? No? Okay.
Just
Oh.
one comment.
Okay, Counselor Earl?
For those who may watch this recording after the fact, later in the evening, sometime this week, if they're looking to follow up or inquire, what would be the best way for us to direct them to do that? So, just so they have that opportunity.
Terry?
Through your worship, if the public has any questions, the best way to send them in would be to send them to 2023budget@dawsoncreek.ca. I do believe that's published on our website as well, but that would be the best avenue.
Perfect. Thanks, Terry. All right, if there's nothing else, our next order of business is to close the public consultation session, so. We need a motion for that? No? Okay. It's closed.